not fail. I haven't always been able to say that. I haven't always believed it, but just this week, this song was really important to me in the past, and coming to it this week, as I've been listening to it again and again, it's like, no, he never did fail, did he? It was just a matter of I didn't see it. I didn't see it before. Anyway, I love it. So, all right, you got a Bible, go James chapter 1. James chapter 1. All right, do you guys have those friends that, like, there's some friends, like, when you meet them, there's lots of small talk and banter that goes at the beginning of a conversation. Maybe eventually you get to something real, but you kind of go through the niceties or whatever. Oh, hey, how you doing? How are the kids? Like that. James is not that guy, right? Because you also have that friend, it's like you haven't seen him in ages, and like you just like, oh, hey, and then immediately starts in on something hard and intense and real. Like there, that's James. James starts, he does verse 1. Okay, James, bondservant, blah, 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 to these people, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let's start talking. And then he just goes after it. Verse 2, there's no lead up to it. He's like, here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about suffering. Like first 30 seconds of the conversation, it's like, okay, James, I guess this is what we're doing today here. I want to do this. Before we get into that, though, I want to tell two stories. They may not seem like they relate, but there's a connection between these two stories in James chapter 1. Here's the two stories, both from the Bible. One is in Luke chapter 10. Jesus tells a story about a man who went walking on a road. As he was walking on that road, it says he fell among a band of thieves. The thieves jump him, they beat him, they take everything from him, strip him, leave him for dead. There, okay, that's one story. The second story, Acts chapter 27, the Apostle Paul finds himself, he's been arrested now, and he's being sent from Jerusalem to Rome, where he's going to stand trial, eventually executed, wrongly so, but eventually executed there. He's going to stand trial, and to get from Jerusalem to Rome, he has to sail on a ship. He's on this ship going across the Mediterranean Sea, and while he's on the Mediterranean Sea, they hit this massive storm, and in this storm, it says that the storm smashes their boat up against a reef. The waves and the storm encompass them there. I say those two stories because there's this word that shows up in verse 2 that shows up only 3 times in all of the Bible. James chapter 1, verse 2, where it says, count it all joy when you meet various kinds of trials. And then the story of Luke 10 and the story of Acts chapter 27. Now, when you start talking through James 1, 2, where it says, count it all joy when you meet, when I've read through this in the past, that word is always been a pretty innocuous word. It's been this almost like a throwaway word in the midst of it. Like meat, kind of like, you're walking through the grocery store and you run into a friend in the produce section. It's always sounded like this really simple thing. But the only other 2 times this word shows up in the Bible, it shows up in the context of a man who falls among robbers that beat him and leave him for dead. The other time it shows up as a man who's on a ship and he gets crashed into this reef and the waves and the storm are just pounding down upon him there. This is not an innocuous word. This is a word that is filled with great adversity. And it says, and James is saying, I want you to, when you face pain like that, when you feel like a band of thieves has jumped you and beaten you and left you for dead, when you experience a shipwreck there, when you find yourself on a ship that you didn't want to be on, sailing across the sea that you never wanted to cross, in the middle of a storm that you didn't belong in, trying to overcome a shipwreck that you didn't cause. He's like, when you find yourself there, I want you to count it joy. When you're dealing with that kind of pain, I want you to count it joy. All right. Now, I'm going to get back to the text. I need to briefly pull away from the sermon just a little bit to talk about, I need to give a little, is disclaimer the right word? Disclaimer. All right. One of the things that the church, well, this isn't just true of church, this is true of humanity, but church has really jumped on board with this. One of the things that we've not done a good job of doing is differentiating between different types of adversity and pain. I have seen James 1:2 used as this Band-Aid that we slap on every kind of adversity, regardless of what it is. All right, but we need to remember that pain occurs, adversity occurs on a spectrum. There, like you have this world where there's no pain, and then you got level 1, level 2, level 3. right on up to severe enduring pain. Now, all of these things will fall under the moniker of pain, or, and to use James's term, a trial, or an adversity. They're all of them, but the kind of treatment that you give at this level is not what you give at this level, right? So I remember I was thinking of this, my son, this is when he was like two years old. He was still a toddler. I know he is a toddler because he wasn't able to walk the stairs yet. He was still doing that thing the way, you've seen the way the 2-year-olds go downstairs. Sometimes they just flop on their belly and then slide like they're like doing a reverse luge kind of thing. And that was what he was doing. He went through a phase where he really enjoyed watching things roll down the stairs. And so he would take things and just chuck them down the stairs. And fortunately, he doesn't feel that way anymore because he's of size that he could roll me down the stairs if he wanted to. But anyway, and one particular day, we didn't catch it at the time until it was too late, but he'd grabbed one of these glass, like a new Yankee candle, and he decided to see what that did when he rolled it down the stairs. And he rolled it down the stairs, and it gave this very, very satisfying shattering sound when it hit the landing at the bottom of the stairs. And he was very happy about this, and he wanted to go see it. So he flops on his belly and slides down, and of course he's barefoot. And guess what he hits at the landing, right? He gets a gash in his foot, a little deeper than what we could do with a Band-Aid at home. And so we go to take him to urgent care. When he gets to urgent care, they do what you're supposed to do. They start picking pieces of glass out, and they irrigate it and clean it up real good. And then if I remember correctly, they use some super glue or some kind of adhesive to seal that wound up together. Now, the care that he got that day was wonderful. It was exceptional medical care. It was exactly what he needed. Imagine we're sitting there in urgent care as they're employing their wound care techniques, which were spot on for what he needed. Imagine somebody then comes into the room and he's got a javelin sticking through his abdomen, right? Like, and the same nurse and doctor that worked on our son now is like, okay, we're going to go work on Javelin Guy. If they took the same technique they used on my son with his foot and use it on the Javelin Guy, with my son, it's exceptional care. With Javelin Guy, it's malpractice. Right? It's still wound care. It's still, all of that fits under the category of wound. Technically, my son's wound was in the same category as Javelin Guy's wound because it's all wounds. But it's irresponsible to use level 4 care for a level 10 wound. I say that to say what churches love to do, what Christians love to do with James 1:2 is this countable joy when you're going through adversity of different kinds, is we treat this as this Band-Aid that we're just going to slap it on any wound that presents itself. And it's like, see, I'm dropping truth on you, man. How are you not better yet? And then somehow blame Javelin Guy that he didn't heal from that. Right? As I was looking, by the way, this sermon, did you notice that last Sunday we didn't do James? I don't know if you knew that or not. I picked up on it. You want to know why? Because I hadn't figured this piece out yet. I didn't know how to talk about James 1:2 to people that I knew were going to be in the room with level 10, level 9, level 8 level wounds. And I'm like, what I'm about to say is going to actually not help them. It's going to hurt them, right? Because the way you treat wounds of this degree is not the way you treat wounds here. James 1:2 works for every kind of wound. I want to say that clear. Every kind of wound, actually James's language is for the variety of trials that are out there. It works for all of them. James 1:2 works for all of them. You know what doesn't work for all of them? My sermon today. Okay, I just want that. So right here and below, we're talking level 6. I might occasionally pop up something that might hit level 7, maybe. All right, if you're here today and you're dealing with level 10, level 9, level 8 wound, like these really intense, severe, enduring pain, and something I say today confuses you, frustrates you, makes you feel guilty or ashamed or any kind of negative thing, like it binds you up in some way, it doesn't impart grace to your life, can I make a request of you? You forget that I ever preached this sermon. Because if I was dealing with your wound today, level 10, level 9, level 8 kind of wound, I wouldn't preach it the way that I'm going to right now. There's a place for you to deal with those wounds. There is. My goodness, there is. This sermon's not going to be one of those places. And if you need help finding somebody to help you work through those wounds, we're in. All right, I just want you to hear that. We're in. We'll do what we can to help you. There's some people in our community that are really good at this, and we'll get you connected to them there. All right? Okay, so there we go. Done with that little commercial. Back to the text. Where was that in the text? Oh, yeah, the considerate. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you go along. He's like, all right, sometimes life forces you onto ships you don't want to be on, to sail seas you didn't want to cross, to endure storms that you should never been in, and to survive the wrecks that you didn't cause. James, like, sometimes that happens. And you know what he says we're supposed to do when we do? We're supposed to count it all joy. Want to know another reason I didn't preach this last week? Okay. There was one, I looked at my sermon Saturday night, pulled it out of the oven. It's like, still doughy in the middle. Like, let's put this one back. Like, I'm not good at this. I don't know who is good at this. James is apparently good at this. Counting it all joy when your life is in shambles because of somebody else. Count it all joy when you're forced to sail across the sea that you wanted nothing to do with. Count it, like, really, James? Joy? But that's what he says, count it joy. Actually, a real good, another way it could have been translated is a deem it an occasion for joy. When you're going through pain, like, and you're looking at it, it's like, man, I'm in pain right now. James would look at it as like, hey, you're in pain. That's an occasion for joy right there. That's why James didn't have many friends. Like, that's why James didn't have many friends there. But, like, it's like, deem it an occasion for joy. I've been thinking about this. One of the things that I realized as I was processing this one for me personally is some people view pain differently. Not everybody views pain the same way. Some people think pain is something you avoid at all costs. Other people, maybe they're not trying to avoid it, but once it happens, they're shutting down. But other people, they view pain almost as, it's irrelevant. Is that the right way to put it? I remember, there was this woman who was kind of a bit of a mini hero for me. Her name's Annette Seidemann. I've talked about her a handful of times here before. I remember one time she and her husband were up in years. I want to say they were both in their 90s at this point. They're still living on their own. They're living on the side of a cliff. Like, who put a house on the side of a cliff? I don't know, but they did. It's like, oh, this is the side of a cliff. Let's put some 90-year-olds in there. That'll be fun. And anyway, so I drive to this cliff and I pick them up. And I don't remember why I was picking them up or where we were going. I remember it was summertime though, because the car was hot. And I got these two old people in my car with me, and as we're driving along, I'm like, oh, hey, Annette, how's the temperature for you? You know, just I could, you want it warmer, you want it cooler? How you feeling? And she just says, oh, I didn't really, I guess I hadn't really thought about it. She says, I learned a long time ago that if you need to be comfortable, there's a lot of life you're going to miss out on. I'm like, it's like, Annette, I was just asking if you wanted the temperature up, you know, right? But you fast forward the clock a year or two later, and Annette had a series of strokes, and I went to visit her in the hospital, and I walk in, and I said, Annette, how you doing? And Annette was a piano player. That was her thing. She went to college on the 1940s and been playing it her entire life. And this particular stroke, first stroke didn't take her ability to play the piano, but this one did. Her hand was it was weak and cobbled up, and I watched her. She was, and anyway, I just said, how you doing? And she says, oh, Pastor, I'm so blessed. And then she went on and she was showing me, she had that little tray that rolls across the hospital bed, and she was with her good hand, she took her other hand and she put it out, and she would force her fingers into the piano holding position. And she's like, I know I can't play the piano today, but I'm working on my fingers because I'm hoping I can get it back. And then she sat there and tried to play air piano for me there, so I started dancing for her. It struck me as like, so the same woman who said, I realize in life that if you have to be comfortable, there's a lot of life you're going to miss out on, is the same woman who, when she's facing like really intense loss that would devastate the most of us, she's saying, I'm so blessed. She viewed pain differently than I do. She viewed pain differently than a lot of us do. James, I think, would have been in a similar camp as Annette Seidemann, because James was the kind of person that when he went through pain, he thought it was an occasion for joy. That's different, isn't it? That's way different than how most of us think. But then you get into, we should read the text, 2-4. It says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. I stop right there. The first word we looked at was the word count, or deem it an occasion for joy, but the second word I want us to see is the beginning of verse 3. It's the knowing, for you know. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces this. One of the guys I was reading or preaching, I listened to a handful go over this text. He said that the power for their joy didn't come from a gritty determination for joy. It came from the knowledge of verse 3. That was the power for James's joy. It was now there is a place for gritty determination and joy. Remember, for me at least, that was significant. The year of determined joy, that was 2017. Like, I don't care what happens. I don't care how much life just smacks me around. I'm going to be joyful one way or the other before this thing is done. There is a place for that gritty, determined joy, but that wasn't the source of his joy. The source of his joy, James wasn't like, I'm joyful because I'm determined to be. He was determined to be joyful, but what gave him that joy was the knowledge of verse 3, knowing that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Because James knew what this pain was going to do for him, he viewed it differently. And that's something about people like James, is that they view pain differently is because they view life differently. They have different priorities. They have different agendas than other people. I've recently started this year. I've never been into weightlifting at all. I know that's hard to tell. Like, believe that, but it's true. I've never been into weightlifting, but this year is just it's just gotten fun. I don't know. There's something about it I've enjoyed. So I set a goal for myself. I don't have a deadline for it yet. I'm working on it steadily. I want to do a 400-pound deadlift. That's my goal. I'm not there yet. A deadlift is where you got a barbell on the ground, load it up 400 pounds, and then just stand up with it like that, and hold it in that position. I thought I was there 2 weeks ago. I did 351, and I'm like, okay, I got more in me. I got more. I think I can do this. And then I put 400, and like, nope. Nope. I got the bar to make a clicking noise when I bounced it against the weights. No, so there was no air underneath it, nothing there. So not there yet. But what I've decided is, and this obviously isn't like a terribly important thing, but it's become a goal of mine. And you know what that's done? Because that's a goal of mine, is it's made it so I spend a lot of my life doing this, right? Like, I'll be sitting and I'll just be like, okay, hang on, and I'll just start, and you start, those first 5 or 6 steps, you shuffle, and then and then you get that level of sore, like when you drop something, and you just look at it, and I think, future Jeff can pick that up. I don't really need that anyway, do I? Talking about your life, right? Because the goal is there, the pain is there. And while I would rather I could just work on this and never experience any soreness in my life, the reality is that if this is a goal that I want to hit, I got to expect pain and soreness in my world. It's just going to be a part of the process. James has a goal in his life. And the goal in his life, he says, is to be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. He said, I want to be the kind of man that is filled with so much wisdom, is filled with such a mastery of his desires that I live my life with godliness. I live with holiness. The Apostle Paul had a similar conversation, totally different way of phrasing it, but a similar one, as it was in the book of Philippians, I think it is, where he says, you know what I want? I want to attain that which Christ laid hold of for me. He's like, I know that this life that I have has been given to me by Christ. I know that the fullness, like to be able to stand before God in holiness and righteousness, I know that that's a gift from Christ. I know that I've not earned that, but I want to live my life in such a way that I'm worthy of it. that I honor this Christ who's given so much by saying like, hey, like I take this seriously. And I want to walk a path of righteousness. I want to walk a path of holiness and wisdom and goodness. I want to be the kind of man that reflects the kind of God that you are. That's what James is saying here. James, like, this is my life. Like, that is a goal of my life, is to be of that caliber. You know what's going to be required to hit those levels? Pain. You can't grow those muscles without getting sore. You just can't. And so that's why James is looking at this adversity and is like, hey, listen, like, this is stupid. I know it's painful. I get it. I realize that. But you know what this is doing? It's making us stronger. It's making us, he said, the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. It's going to make it so we can hang on. It's going to make it so we can keep plodding away. It's going to make it so we can endure. You know, like, James is one of those guys who's like, maybe you come in here with more talent, but here's what you'll never do is you'll never outlast me. And the hardest, that was a Babe Ruth, the hardest man to beat is the man who keeps getting back up. Right? And James is like that. I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy, because the guy that doesn't give up, you don't beat him. The guy that doesn't give up, he becomes mature and complete, lacking nothing. Like that's who that guy is. If I could pull in Thomas Edison, here's another quote. Some of you guys have seen this. I like this quote. Some people miss opportunity because it shows up in overalls and looks like work. Right? And with James, he wants to put in the work. He wants to put in the work of being a godly man, of being a godly person. And this has caused me to maybe ask a question of myself a little bit here. And I don't want this to become a guilt-ridden thing. I don't want this to be a try harder, do better kind of a message here. But there is a question for me of, Jeff, do you share the same goals that James does? Do you value godliness to this point that when pain comes into your life, you can see it as an occasion for joy, because it's going to do its work in you to make you the man that you want to be? Or is it just a case of like, I don't really care that much. I don't know that I really want to be that much more godly. I'm pretty content with the level that I'm at. At which point, it's like, what was it? I saw that quote here. Somebody shared it to me. It was like, dear, whatever doesn't kill me, I'm strong enough now. Thank you. Okay. Right. Like, But if I desire to, in the words of Paul, lay hold of that which Christ laid a hold of for me, if I aspire to that, and pain comes into my world, you know what that does? That gives me a reason to be joyful. Because like, hey, this is a chance for me now. I may not have wanted this pain, but this is a chance for me now. To go to war with my desires, to go to war with my flesh, to go to war, it's a chance for me now. Roll down to verse 12. It says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. We're going to get back to next week. We'll pick up again on verse 5, but I wanted to jump to verse 12 because verse 12 is a continuation of the thoughts from verses 2, 3, and 4. Because there's that word steadfast. He's like, count it all joy, knowing that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Like that's what he says in verse 3. And what does steadfastness produce? What steadfastness produces is in verse 12, it produces God giving to us the crown of life. He gives to us the crown of life. And what James is doing here is like, listen, the devil's throwing rocks at you. He's like, but we can turn around and use those rocks to pave our way to something more glorious. Right? And what he says in verse 12 is the same thing that the Apostle John does in Revelation chapter 3. There's a church that's written to the letter, or there's a letter that's written to the church in Smyrna. Not a church that's written to the letter in Smyrna. There's a letter that's written to the church in Smyrna. And in there, Jesus is telling the church in Smyrna, he's like, listen, y'all are about to go through some stuff. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt real bad. But he says, but I want you to hang in there. I want you to hang in there. Be steadfast people. And Jesus, and as you live out that steadfastness, I want you to know that on the other end of that pain is a crown of life that's for you. I recently went back and watched, again, because I just love him so much. The time when they gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to Mr. Rogers. I always get those all the awards blend together for me. Emmy, Grammy, Golden Globe, something. I don't remember which it is, but whatever it is, it's his world. That one. Did you guys ever see that video of it? You should watch it. His speech, everybody does the same speech when I just want to thank this person and this person and this person. Like after you watch it, you're like, that's the most Mr. Rogers way anybody could ever receive an award. You'll fall in love with him all over again there. But I was watching that again, and I was thinking what that would have been like for him. Because the way those Lifetime Achievement Awards work is they will bring you into this auditorium of your peers. Like it's not just a bunch of, random citizens sitting in that room. These are people that have worked in television. These are people who have dedicated their lives to the same thing that Mr. Rogers dedicated his life. They bring him into a room of his peers, and then they will do some kind of a tribute, a video montage that tells the story. And for Fred Rogers, it was decades in the making, right? I think he started in the 60s, I think it was. I believe he started in the 60s in television. And then over the next 40 some odd years, maybe 50 years, he continued to work in television. They play this video montage talking about the different things that he did and what he contributed to our society through his television career. And it's very honoring and uplifting. And then in front of all of his peers, they announced Fred Rogers would come to the stage, and he comes up and they hand him a trophy, and the entire room stands up and they begin to cheer. They honored him for his lifetime, for his decades of work that he put in. When James here says what the book of Revelation says, that Jesus says, if you'll be steadfast, there's a crown of life that's waiting for you. My understanding of that, and maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding of that is that's a Lifetime Achievement Award from Jesus Christ. Like it's him looking at you saying, or not just saying, and I don't know how this works. I don't know, maybe this would be cool. Maybe there's an auditorium in heaven. And we're just going to have like Lifetime Achievement Award night, Crown of Life night. And one of these days it's going to be you. And I know you're like, really, me? Really? Me? Yeah, you. It's going to be you. And Jesus is going to play his little video montage, the story of your life. Not those parts. And maybe it's going to be in front of a group of people and Jesus is just going to honor you, or maybe it's going to be in an intimate one-on-one. Jesus sits down with us, next to a river or whatever, and then just starts to just say, hey, I want you to know I saw what you went through. I saw it. I saw those tears. Matter of fact, as he collects their tears in a bottle, I heard your prayers. I saw your labor. I saw the things that you did. I saw the things that you had to endure. I saw the way that you took shots for doing the right thing. I saw the people that you loved turned against you. I saw that. And yet somehow or another, you kept the faith. I saw the way you faced that disease. I saw that thing that was going on with your child. Nobody else in the world knew about that, didn't they? Nobody else knew about it. I saw it. I saw the labor that you put in for them. I saw what you did for your neighbors. I saw what you did for your community. I saw what you did. I saw the things that you did, the way that you endured. I saw that, and in this moment, I want to honor you. Does this sound weird to you? This sounds weird to me. For Jesus to, at any point, tap me on the shoulder and say, Jeff, I want to honor you. To the point that it feels almost a little bit inappropriate for me to say this out loud, but tell me that's not what James 1:12 is saying. That when you are steadfast, he will give to you the crown of life. Revelation 3, I know this hurts like crazy, but hang on. Hang on. I'm going to honor you. I will. And I'm going to hand you the crown of life, and I'm going to wrap my arms around you and just say, I love you, and I appreciate all the things that you did. Book of Hebrews chapter 6. God is not unjust to forget the way that you served. He's seen it, you guys. He's seen it. Even when nobody else did. He saw what you were doing, and he is thankful. He's going to honor you for this there. And James is saying, yeah, horrible things come. You're going to be walking down the road, and a band of robbers is going to jump you. You're going to be forced onto a boat that you don't want to get on, to sail across the sea you never wanted to cross, to face a storm you never should have been in, to deal with a shipwreck that you never caused. Yeah, that's going to happen. You're going to meet those kinds of trials. But James says when you do, count it joy. Because that trial is going to turn you into the woman, going to turn you into the man that you want to be. If you let steadfastness do its work. That's one of the keys, verse 4. If you let steadfastness do its work, it will turn you into the kind of person there. So count it all joy, and also count it joy because someday Jesus is going to honor you for what you just went through and how you didn't give up. You didn't. Because that's what Jesus did. He never gave up, did he? He faced his cross. He carried his cross. He faced all of the horrors and disgustingness that the devil and sin could throw at Jesus Christ. He faced all of it, and he endured. He endured. And guess where he is right now? He's seated at the right hand of the Father. He is crowned in glory right now. This is where our Jesus is. And he's like, you're my follower. Come on. Do the same thing. Carry your cross. Endure this. Get through this. And someday, I'm going to honor you too. Not seated at the right hand of glory. He gets that because he's God. But I tell you what, I'm going to be pretty okay with that God handing me a crown. I think that's going to be more than honor enough for that, huh? All right. Well, there you have it. James chapter 1. Why don't we close in prayer? Father, thank you for the gift of James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. I got to say, this concept sounds a lot easier for me to preach than it is to live. You know how good I'm not at this. And I suspect a number of us in this room, we don't view trials as a source of joy. And yet, if we understand them and you and life rightly, we would. So, Lord, would you bless us with whatever perspective it is that we need? If it's a faith, if it's a priority, it's a goal, if it's an understanding of you, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is that we need, whatever we're lacking, Lord, would you bless us with it so that we might find our way to joy in the midst of it. We got people right now that are finding themselves in their own shipwrecks, finding themselves bleeding to death by the side of the road. People in our midst right now in this group, Lord, we pray for extra grace for them. May they have extra faith to see it through. May their strength be enough for the days of for the affliction they're facing. Bless them, we pray. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right. Thanks so much. 2 more nights. Tonight and tomorrow. Done with the Feast of Tabernacles. All right. Have a good week. And it'd be intense, yeah.